In this employee census, we try to streamline all the information that you're going to need for the employees and also the dependents. So if you look here, we have this is exactly what it is. We need first name, last name, gender, date of birth, home state, all that information. But here we have required employee data and required dependent data. Why? Well, because they're different. So the employee, we want to know first name, last name. This is medical insurance stuff, by the way, for the most part. Gender, date of birth, what state are they in? And this part is super important because it's going to be different than their work state. The dependents, if you notice, they don't work there. They're not a remote worker or not. So that's why we basically stop right here. This is where the dependent info stops. We just need to know the health coverage level, the home zip code, the home state. And yes, you want to confirm that if you have these as the same item, sometimes, somebody might not live with their spouse in the same state, or they may not live with the dependent in the same state. Maybe they're separated. The child may live somewhere else, maybe off to college. There's a lot of different reasons why, they may be in a different zip code or home state, and it's important for you to notate that. Also, the health coverage level. Some of our clients, they may end up covering for employee plus child, but not the entire plan 100%. And, maybe in this case, right, Jonathan here, he gets employee plus child, and Jane at her job, she actually gets 100% paid for employee only. So maybe they're Jonathan and Joshua, they're on the same plan, and Jane's on a separate plan. So then it would be waived employee plus child, employee plus child. It's still important for you to have that because then for the waive reasons, right, we want to have some of that information in there. And look, the waive reasons, you don't have to put that on the census. It doesn't really come up there. But when you go back to your source document, like we talked about in the other piece with your, benefits deduction or your benefits election, report, that's going to have the waive reasons in there. And it's good for them to know that, especially if you're low on participation. Remote worker. This is important for workers' comp purposes, right? They want to know what state are you in? Where's your work zip code? In this case, right, if he's remote, he's in California and his work zip code and his home zip code are the same, he may work at his home, which would be different than if he worked on site at a company where, there's like forklifts and tractors and all these different things, which brings me to, well, what's his job title? If you're a forklift manager, how are you at home? If you're like, supposed to be running forklifts in, a warehouse, then that's going to let us know that this information may be incorrect. And it's really important because if workers' comp is a big deal, their rate, their comp code, we want to make sure that's accurate. And so do the PEOs, because again, they want to give you an accurate quote. They want to give you information that makes sense. They don't want to have to re-rate you later on. If you get all this information ready up front, it's really good to do that because, again, you're going to get the best quote as far as the most accurate quote. Employee status. Full-time? Are they part-time? Are they on COBRA? They're laid off? What's their status? If they show up on your medical invoice or they're in your payroll reports, the PEOs are going to ask them questions they're going to want to know because they're going to want to know what you're doing with that COBRA, that person on COBRA. They're going to want to know what the game plan is when, are we absorbing some of that cost? Are we putting these people onto our plans or not? It does become super important for you to look at that info. Your yearly or hourly wages. So this information, again, goes back to workers' comp, but it also goes back to payroll taxes. We want to estimate the payroll taxes on the employer side specifically because those taxes are going to be owed by the payroll company or by the PEO. And if the PEO has to take on that tax liability, they're going to want to know when they do a soft credit check and figure out, hey, is this company in good standing? Like, is their credit in good standing? Can they afford for us to, could they afford to pay not only the net pay, the benefits, the workers' comp, the payroll taxes? Because we're going to pass that through, but we have to check, like, is it feasible for them to afford this solution? So it's very important that you put this information. Also, some PEOs, believe it or not, they do percentage of payroll. So if you have bonuses and things like that, you're going to want to make sure you're this is kind of like the next level of looking at this stuff and probably why you want to work with the professional along the way. But how you do your pay is very important in this process. And any savvy, PEO buyer, would know what are our common wages that we know are going to be there in terms of wages. And then as far as like, is it salary or is it hourly? Well, that becomes important because if you have people who are at 60 hours constantly, you're going to want to know what double overtime, with overtime in certain states, is it time and a half, 2 times and a half, and that's going to impact the workers' comp rate, which then affects your overall pricing. So again, like this information, it seems like it's very detailed, and it is. A PEO is a very like comprehensive solution. And then, does the job require travel? Well, that's super important to know. If you're going somewhere where there's, let's just say like there's a country at war and it's international, and your employees have to travel there, and U.S. citizens are not really welcome there at this time, then the company's going to want to know if the nature of business is that employee has to make those travels. What are we going to do for the workers' comp? Do we need to actually put them on our U.S. plan, or do we need to find an expat plan? Right. So some of those things will be in consideration, and it's not that there's no solution if you don't qualify, and it's not going to knock you out. But it's always important for you to just be forthright and give all the most accurate data and information, because that's how we avoid these big surprises. You get your whole company on the PEO platform, and then next thing you know, oh, now all of a sudden we're not going to be able to do business with you in next year because this doesn't align and this claim came up, and we're not responsible, you're responsible, and now all of a sudden there's a little bit of confusion. You want to give the most accurate info. Handling products. If you're a software person, they're going to know that from your workers' comp code. And if you're not in a warehouse, you're not really like handling products, making something physically, like touching or like, producing these products. Are you welding? What are you doing? They want to know. The reason being, again, it goes back to workers' comp. So this is some of the high level information that you would want to put on a census. And PEOs, they have different census templates. Some have one where you just do this information for the employees, and then they have a separate one for the dependents. I find in working with dozens of PEOs going through thousands of different processes, it is best to have this type of format where you have the employees and the dependents in the exact same sheet. It will make it so much more simple for you down the line. I promise if you put it in different sheets and all that, you're going to feel like you're doing the work twice. That's pretty much what most clients say. And then, so that's like the employee census document. Again, these are like samples. With our clients, we always like let them know, hey, here's the information you have to have. And over here, like these are just samples. So you do want to go ahead and cut those out before we turn them in, if you end up using this template. And the last item over here for this planning document, this is where you would put your source document. You might have like a raw census that you get. That's not necessarily in this format, but we always want to benchmark the census that you download and the information here into what's going to be required of the PEOs. I haven't had any issues turning this census into any PEO unless they've needed additional information that wasn't on this sheet. But again, that's far and few between. The other source documents you want to add in here just as backup so that in one nice, organized, clean way, what information do we have? Do we need to how do we need to update our timelines? Where can I quickly find this stuff? Is it here, there? You're going to have so many different areas where this information is, residing. It's almost just best to have one solid workbook, and this is it.